Hello, listeners. This is the Ecommerce podcast, brought to you by Coveo, the first e-commerce podcast focused exclusively on how enterprise brands and teams like yours can be smarter with data, technology, and resources to get an edge. I'm your host, Sergio Iacobucci, the Director of E-commerce Marketing at Coveo, and as always, you can expect today's conversations to bring you new approaches and tools for e-commerce growth and profitability. We're very excited for today's guest, Shawn Wilkinson. Shawn has been pushing the strategy at Dick's Sporting Goods for over 10 years now, working in content, attribution, website tooling, and customer experience strategies. So today we'll discuss Shawn's approach for his Art of the Possible personalization program at Dick's. We'll go through the hurdles, how to bring stakeholders along the journey, and how they're differentiating with this amazing program. So let's get stuck in. Hi, Shawn. Welcome.
Hey, Sergio. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, no worries at all. So we're going to get stuck straight in and try and keep this nice and concise for everyone listening. So you spoke about the Art of the Possible program at NRF actually in the US. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that actually is?
Definitely. So early in 2020 and 2021, when the global pandemic set in, we really wanted to revolutionize the way we conduct our business at Dick's Sporting Goods. We got hyper-focused on our athletes. They've always been a main priority for us, but we really focused in on how we can communicate with them more efficiently. And we had a lot of website learnings, what strategies were working, what wasn't working. I actually led an initiative with the team around email communication and how we could start using website data to communicate more efficiently with our athletes. And I think what was kind of interesting about this was I was very consultative in this role. It wasn't really a role that I had a lot of ownership over. So our leadership team then challenged me and said, hey, are you able to go on and take this email program that you've designed and bring it into our e-commerce platform somehow? So the Art of the Possible was really our first stab at taking website personalization and bringing it onto our e-commerce platform and really bringing it into our department and owning the strategy and the implementation of all of this work that we were doing. So it started off very basic. We looked for what website tools we wanted to use. So I did a lot of extensive research, figured out what website tools were available for personalization and how we could go about using those to update different content on our website, how we could make different audiences. So for the month of April in 2021, we ended up putting together a list of strategies and campaigns and projects and tests that we wanted to run for the entire month. And that was really what we deemed, that's kind of where the Art of Possible was born. The entire month of April, we put together numerous tests. We were launching multiple tests per week, and we were doing these small, very easy, low level of effort tests, getting them stood up, testing out, seeing what our audience and how our athletes were reacting to those tests, and then just continue to rapid fire those out, get them out into the market, out into production. So it was really great for us. We saw a lot of positive results from that. And then we ended up pivoting from that Art of Possible for the month of April, and we extended that out. So then these initiatives went into May, June, July. We continued to iterate, grow, and add in additional testing and resources so that we could continue to grow this and build an entire e-commerce program around it.
Great. Sounds amazing. And I think people taking that approach, and test and learn has been around for a long time, beyond commerce, but specifically within commerce, I think implementing it is sometimes harder than people think. You make it sound quite easy in terms of what you've just said, and like taking everyone through that. But I'm sure it wasn't easy to achieve. You've got to bring a large organization along with you on that journey. So what challenges did you face when trying to launch this initiative?
Yeah, definitely looking back now, we're seeing, I'm looking at all the good things that we did, but there were challenges along the way. I think probably a couple of the things that we learned was to launch something like this with an organization our size, there are a lot of different people in different roles that are involved and interested, and you want everyone to be excited, but at the same time, you don't want to have a ton of slowdown. Like you want to move very quickly when you're trying to test and learn and iterate. So I'd say the first kind of challenge we had to overcome was really getting that executive leadership buy-in. So really building out the program strategy, figuring out a vision statement for what we wanted and where we planned on going, and a roadmap for how we were going to get there, what tools we needed, what was available to us, and how we were going to handle all of that. And then really going around and evangelizing to the team, saying, hey, we have these tools available to us. Here are some easy tests that we could stand up. Here are the resources that we need. I was able to take on most of the work myself, and I worked cross-functionally with some other teams within our e-commerce area, but it really helped us kind of move faster and kind of get everybody excited about it. I'd say the next thing was definitely to start small. I think one of the big things and one of the pitfalls a lot of people run into is they want to put together these really grand, well-constructed, full customer shopping journey tests, but those are really, easy to get tripped up on. Something goes off the rails, and then you end up derailing your entire test, and it doesn't end up launching, and then it's demotivating to yourself, the team. You kind of lose that excitement and that interest. Starting small and having low level of effort tests really enable you to launch tests quickly, get things out into the market, read the results, get people excited about the results, and then continue to iterate on there. So I definitely say that starting small. You don't have to have these big, grand tests. You can have these little bite-sized tests that you're going to launch out into the market and kind of go from there. And then the last part I'd probably say was continuing to iterate, and kind of the phrase I've coined at Dix is failure isn't final. So no matter what test you're running and what you're doing here, you're always going to learn something from that. So there have been times when our athletes respond really well, and we say, okay, they responded really well to this. We're going to scale this test, or we're going to make a little tweak and scale it or test it again. There are times when we thought we had a winning test in our hands and it didn't work out well at all. And we say, okay, we learned something from that. Can we take a winning strategy and apply that to this new test? Do we completely iterate on it? But I think for me, it was always saying that no matter what you do or what the test outcome is, you're still learning from it. That's what's important.
Yeah, I really love that. Failure isn't final. It's a perfect way of looking at it. And I think part of the reason why sometimes these big experiences that people want to build out get so big, it comes from people's excitement, right? Like this idea of like being able to change things and make things better. Everyone gets super into it, but then it can make this like quite small thing absolutely massive, and you kind of forgetting like why you originally built it and trying to maybe test like multiple hypotheses at once. Like it can become a real difficulty. Just to give everyone an idea of like what's actually launched, can you give an example of like a campaign? Could be recent, could be an old one, but something that's kind of easy to understand over audio, I guess.
Definitely.
Something that Dix has launched.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess we need to go back to the art of the possible and kind of talk through that a little bit. One of the scenarios that we launched for that, I think it's fairly easy for everyone to kind of wrap their brains around here, is we typically will run flash sales on occasion. So they're limited time sales, a couple of days. And one of the big tests that we kind of started off with was brand affinity. So if an athlete we built out some audiences saying that we know these athletes tend to browse or purchase one of these brands. And then what we ended up doing was we customized our flash sale page with brand specific creative, CTAs, and copy that spoke to that. So whenever an athlete visited that page on one of our flash sale days, we knew they were part of one of these audiences that had a affinity for a particular brand. That creative, that copy, and that messaging and the CTAs on that page would update to them. So instead of getting our generic everyone gets it flash sale messaging, they were then getting brand specific messaging, brand specific copy and images. And then the click-through link would take them through to a curated brand collection of products. So I think that's probably one of the easier, quicker, faster tests that we stood up, but it was very simple to get, implemented. We were able to run it for a couple of days. We did run that test over several flash sales that we had just to get more traffic into the experiences. But that was one of the ones that we kind of started off with. I think it'd be an easy lift, easy for us to implement, and then easy for us to track long-term.
Love it. I think it sounds like a great idea. It's the kind of thing that I'm sure anyone listening will be like, we've always thought about doing that, or we do a version of it, or we should be doing that. But really everyone as standard should be doing that kind of thing going forward. I think it's, again, just one of those customer expectations that, you know me, you know what I like to shop. Can you just, please make my life a bit easier when you do have something like a flash sale on, take me through to the right place.
Exactly. And like it does. And again, these aren't going to be complicated tests. Like this was very easy for us to stand up. And I think that's what we're talking about. We're going back, early in the conversation, talking about these being bite-sized tests. That's what we're saying. Like you're taking some copy, you're taking some images, you're able to update all of this in time. You're building out an audience. Like it's not really long time consuming work, but it's going to have a really great impact on your customer and athlete experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, I totally agree. Did you ever come across anyone or any, like you were surprised by some friction, like they weren't interested or like seemed, to want to not go ahead with the program, you had to convince them a bit more, or has it been quite simple with everyone?
Yeah, I'd say it was a little bit of like ebb and flow there. I think that the really difficult problem is we only have so much real estate on our website. So there are only so many placements that are available to be personalized. There's only so many messages available to us. So I think one of the big challenges for us was getting the having the bandwidth to say, like, can we take this on these additional projects? I think that's why I was able to take on a lot of this myself, learning how the tools work, getting all of our audiences built out, getting the different experiences launched on the site, working cross-functionally there. But I think trying to figure out that real estate piece is really important. And then there are always competing priorities. So I think that was the other piece that we really had to work through, was personalizing content on the website enabled us to show more stories to more athletes, but at the same time, it took a lot more planning and organizing. So it was just that bandwidth and kind of balancing that out. And I think the other piece was kind of what you alluded to earlier. There is a ton of excitement around what we're doing. It's a very exciting tool. It's a very exciting, new feature. Everyone's talking in the industry right now about personalization, and everyone does want to be involved. And I think that's when you have one or two people managing, all this work, and then you have a whole team of people coming down with ideas, trying to manage that workflow, how you prioritize ideas, what the bandwidth looks like to get these all organized and kind of thrown out there, reading the results. Like, there's just always something going on. And I think it's just trying to balance that workload is really tricky and critical in the end.
I'm going to guess, Shawn, that you are a bit of a master at stakeholder management, because I could imagine everyone wants to get in. Like, it's one of those things. Everyone wants to get involved. Everyone wants to have a say. And I think it's very difficult to keep the reins on things and guardrails in place. And it sounds like you're doing an absolutely amazing job at it. Just zooming out a little bit, obviously this program is part of it. This personalization program is part of it. But what role does e-commerce play, and the experience that you provide on e-commerce play for Dick's overall differentiation strategy?
So I think that's a great question. I think it's really neat that we have a really interesting setup with our e-commerce organization. Plus, we're also brick and mortar still. So we're able to meet our athletes wherever they want. So if they are in the middle of the night shopping for some kind of sports equipment, they're able to go on our website, do all of their research. They can buy online and pick up in store the next day. They are able to go to a brick and mortar store and putt with a new putter, or they can, try on a t-shirt, or they can feel a baseball glove that they want to they might be interested in purchasing. They can also, if they're in a rush and, their child's playing sports and they need soccer cleats, they can either do buy online, pick up in store, or we now have same day delivery available to them. So I think our e-commerce website really adds to our overall holistic view of what we are as a retailer, because we're able to meet our athletes everywhere. And now our personalization program is just layering on top of that, saying that, okay, now we can meet you where you want and how you want. Now we can give you the content that we know you're interested in, and really use that to kind of bring this holistic picture together and say, hey, we are anything you need whenever you need us.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it, right? Like, maybe, Dick's Sporting Goods in X location might be closed because of opening hours, but officially it's still open, because you can just go online, you can find what you want, and then choose to, buy online and pick up in store, pretty quickly on top of that. And it is the experience that customers, are starting to expect as standard. But it's also a great thing that someone who has brick and mortar stores as well as an online presence, they can really offer something that pure play e-commerce sometimes can't. You do have to wait for that delivery. I know it's not easy to get all of those fulfillment things and inventory in stores reporting back in real time. That's all very hard to do. But once you can get there, then the customer gets a seamless experience. Just out of interest, when it comes to, scaling out the experiences that do work, and, there's a winning test there. People might want to know this because, based on what platform they use, do you keep it inside your testing platform and run it at like 100%, or do you take it out and get IT teams to implement that, fully across the site, so it's then out of the testing platform?
Yeah, it sort of depends a little bit on the capabilities, bandwidth, kind of how much or how little we have going on right now, and what we're able to scale successfully within our tools versus what we might need our product teams to be involved with. I think that's kind of the guidance I've been giving, is if we're able to scale this through my team with our tools that we're using, I would prefer us to do that, and then just take that bandwidth and those resources and dedicate those to something more of a complex problem that needs solved. So if we can figure this out on our side, let us figure this out. You go solve something that we can't figure out right now, and let's spend our resource and our time there, because eventually at the end of the day, that's going to get us the furthest, fastest.
Yeah, definitely. Have you had any feedback from customers? Like, have you heard anyone or seen any voice of the customer stuff where they've said, I've really enjoyed this experience, or this helped me along? I know people don't always notice things. Like, sometimes personalization is good when it's subtle and people don't realize it's happening. But have you had any of that, or is it a case of it's all subtle stuff that's going on at the moment?
The vast majority of our work is very subtle. It's very in the moment. So you don't even really, the goal, kind of our goal is you don't know that you're being personalized to in the moment. And that's what's really important to us, is that it's a seamless, subtle experience that's just injected into your shopping journey as you're kind of navigating through the website. We have seen increases in productivity, which have been great. And we have gotten some customer feedback that's been very positive about kind of the work that we're doing and kind of the direction that the website's going from a feasibility and functionality standpoint.
Sure. And so, like, what? Obviously, I don't know to what extent you can talk about results. So you can choose, Shawn. But what sort of results have you seen from things like content personalization and the personalization efforts that you've been putting in place?
Yeah, we've been able to launch. I mean, we've launched in the last couple of years hundreds of experiences on the website, which has been great. We're working on scaling those out now, and the majority of our tests that we're running are producing positive results. So we're seeing increases in productivity, sometimes in the double-digit range, which has been great to see. So it's been very solid overall, very encouraging. I think having those metrics to back up the program overall has been really helpful too, to say like, hey, we're going down the right path here, and this is very encouraging.
Yeah, I think that's where like your point on just making sure you get a lot of stuff out as well, like don't overcook it, because you could start a program where you overdo it and then all the results are bad, and then it could be deemed as like, yes, failure isn't final, but some people might go, this isn't working. So you need some volume in there as well, right? So that you have some stuff that is going to work because you're trying multiple things, so that you can showcase that this is a learning experience and we're going in forwards. And I think that's a really, really important part to like how you've structured this art of the possible program. How did your merchandisers and e-commerce team manage to juggle like completing their normal tasks with then launching all of this stuff as well? Like how did that work together?
Yeah, so it was this initial launch that we had here was actually structured a little bit differently. So I coordinated most of the work that was being done. So we really made the process simple for the merchandising teams. And then I worked with our web operations group as well to kind of help coordinate some of the artwork and some of the copy needs that we had. But it was really just kind of bringing as much onto my own plate as I could and saying like, hey, I'm going to manage this as best as I can in the short term, and then working cross-functionally with some of the other teams to kind of get everything organized and sent over. And then really, once I kind of got my copy and creative, it was setting everything up in our tool set that we had, getting it launched and scheduled. If we had any kind of nuances, kind of managing it while it was live. And then once we kind of hit a point where we wanted to reap results, pulling those metrics, through our internal analytics capabilities, and then communicating those out, good, bad, and different.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So what's kind of next steps for Dix and the personalization journey? What vision do you have for this sort of like online customer experience?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been really great. 2022 was a really big year for us in personalization. We really pushed the envelope far on the program, both with what I was doing and from a testing and innovation perspective, which has been great. We have a few things on our roadmap for right now. We are looking to bring in some data science modeling, which is going to help with predictions and kind of help give what's the best category, the next product for our athletes whenever they're shopping on the site. Up to this point, it's been a more manual manipulation on our side. So we're kind of going through and setting the logic there. So having some of that artificial intelligence fueling that's going to be really big for us. We're currently in the process of switching over to a real-time CDP. So with the degradation of cookies and those going away from Google and a lot of the third parties here pretty soon, we're trying to get ahead of the curve there. So we're transferring all of our data over to the CDP platform. So we're rebuilding audiences, relaunching those. And as part of that, migration process, we're getting a lot of new data available to us. So we're able to set up new athlete personas and then kind of combine some of our athlete data that we have, like our rewards program or fulfillment method, with some other data and our personas that we have, kind of merge the two together to say, okay, we have this really unique view of what this athlete looks like. And now we have some different unique activation points. And then I'd say probably the last thing for our journey is we're looking at this more of like a holistic view now. So instead of it taking as one piece of creative or one story or experience being updated on our homepage, on a category page, on a product listing page, we're taking this more journey-based approach where it's going to start from the top of the funnel, which could be our homepage, all the way down to the PDP when they're adding to cart, and really kind of having that unified message flow from start to finish as they're shopping. So we're taking more of that holistic approach versus a little bit more of the piecemeal approach that we started with to try and get these small test up and running.
Great. Sounds amazing. I do think that, this whole initiative is absolutely brilliant. I think as well, when you guys start to pull in some of that additional data and merge some of these data sets together, that's when stuff gets like even more exciting, and just so much more attuned and personalized to the customer. So I'm sure they're all going to be very grateful for such an amazing experience. So just to move on to a section that we're starting now on this podcast, which is rapid fire questions. So the idea is that you can give a one-word answer, or you can give a couple of sentences. So I'll go through the questions relatively quickly, and then we'll finish out on a couple of questions to take away as a listener. So, which brand do you think is the best at e-commerce today?
Oh, of course, Dick's Sporting Goods. How to say Dick's Sporting Goods here? I think what really differentiates us from, a lot of the competitors and a lot of the other, retailers in the market, like we said before, is having that brick and mortar and the e-commerce experience, or really bring them together to create a great athlete experience.
Shawn, do you think online sales will overtake offline sales in 20 years?
I definitely do. I think that as the technology that we have for, e-commerce in general begins to grow and evolve, online sales are going to continue to increase in penetration. And I think what's really going to help increase athlete and customer satisfaction and confidence is we're going to unlock different ways for the athlete to feel more confident about their purchases online. And so when you're making big purchases like golf clubs, treadmills, canoes, like those really high ticket items for us, I think being able to increase their confidence there, when we find and unlock new ways to do that, I think that's just going to make it that much easier for online sales to outpace brick and mortar.
I agree. And what's the best advice you've received that's had an impact on your role as a leader in e-commerce?
Yeah, I'd probably say everything will work out in the end. And if it doesn't work out, it's not the end. And I just tend to be a very glass half full type person and very optimistic. And I think that, which we'll talk probably more about later, but yeah, I just want to go for it all the time. And no matter what happens, we just, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. So what's one thing that our audience could act on this week that you think would make their e-commerce better?
I would say launch a test. So go out there and launch some kind of test. And it doesn't have to be an overly complicated test. It doesn't have a ton of, moving parts and pieces. It could be as easy as changing the color of something on your website, updating the copy, changing your ticker messaging around a little bit. It can be something very small and subtle, but then you can kind of gauge that and see what kind of experience that is. Getting started has always been the hardest part for everybody, because there's that giant hump you have to get over. And then once you're over that hump, you're good to go. Like you're going to start rolling, you're going to have some momentum, people are going to get excited. If you can't build a test and launch a test today, design a test this week. So say, okay, I might not know, or I might not be able to go in and launch a test right now, but I'm going to go through and write down all of the things that I want to test. So put together those ideas, put together how you go about using it, what tools you'll use, what kind of capabilities you need, whether you have the resources available to you, and get that done, because then you're setting yourself up for success long-term. And I mean, even build a vision statement for your program that you want to build. Like having those fundamental core pieces in place is going to help set you up for success in the long term.
Totally agree. And I don't think you can ever really do enough. I think having an idea of what you're trying to achieve, obviously the most important part. Like, what are you trying to change? What behavior are you trying to change? But, that's a big thing that we would also say is like, you need to make sure you're constantly trying to push things forward. Are you sure that's the right recommendation strategy for that page? Do you want to try another one against it? Like learn and see what's going to work best. Is that the right badge to be placing on those products? Or could you try some other badges that might spur people on to buy more? I totally agree. You just need to get going, get moving. And part of it is just the act of doing it. And then once it becomes simple and, maybe you're not as familiar with the tool or whatever it might be, you can move fast and you can start to move your way forward. What's one resource? So it could be like a book or a podcast, whatever that you would point out to everyone that you would recommend for leaders to improve their e-commerce experience. What do they need to read or listen to?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I love to read. So this fits right in my wheelhouse. I would probably say, so a few years ago, a little bit of backstory here. A few years ago, I stumbled upon this book called Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo. And the premise is really simple. It's just like the title implies, everything is figure outable. And I think that is something I recommend everybody pick up and read. And I actually read it every January as a reminder that no matter what the year has in store for me, you're going to figure it out. You're going to overcome whatever challenges are, in store for you. But for me, I kind of take that methodology and apply that to the business world. So just when it was coming to this personalization program, and there were a lot of challenges and hurdles that we had to overcome, everything is figure outable. So what do you need to do to overcome X, Y, and Z steps, and then make your dreams turn into a reality? So that, I think, is probably my biggest recommendation for everyone, is like, no matter what happens, you're going to figure it out in the end.
And I think, Shawn, you've accidentally given people 3, which is reread a book. Because I always think that I finish a book and then I'm like, a few months later, I can't actually remember everything that was in there. There's some useful stuff I need to go back. So reread a book is another final tidbit for everyone to take away. Well, Shawn, we're going to end it there. Thank you so much for taking us through the Art of the Possible program, the challenges that you faced, how you overcame them, taking stakeholders along the journey with you. All super important parts to how you launch an initiative as powerful as your personalization one within an organization of your size. So thank you so much for coming on, and speak to you soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sergio. Great being here.